Hello and welcome to this week's video on My Hero Academia. This week I'll be reviewing episode 3 of volume 2 of Vigilantes. You know the rules, and so do I. Let me know what you thought about it in the comment section down below, and you will be right in next week's show. Once you're there, be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, click the button, do all the YouTube stuff that YouTube wants to do, because YouTube is increasing scary place for small content creators. Support your local small content creator today. It will do them a power of good. Now on to the review. And as we do at the start of always reviews, let's start off with the positives and trying to start speaking English again. Whoopsie daisy. Anyway, starting out with the positives, I have to say that this was a very lovely episode. It was fun, charming, and this warm, wholesome feel to it, which feels like some very bloody weird things to say about a superhero series, but you know what? I got a real kick out of this one. It felt like wearing a big, baggy hoodie on a chilly winter's morning watching cartoons. Again, I know that kind of talk is silly, but I really loved this one. I genuinely did. I will admit that it was a little bit on the short side, shorter than I would have liked, though I won't count this as a negative. It just kind of surprised me. Last week's was the half episode, so I presume that we'd be getting a little bit more something, a little bit more fuller and filled out. But this week, no, something short, which isn't so bad because I've got an incredibly busy week this week, so, you know, again, it came as a nice little surprise. It came as a nice little reward, and this episode did feel a lot more significant and did feel a lot more substantive, but I'll get onto that in a little bit more in a moment. I am curious to think as to how this episode will be broadcast in the event that there is an anime, because given its length and the length of the previous episode, I can't help but feel that these two would end up being banded together, combined into a single episode, which I hope wouldn't be the case. I would rather that you put some filler in for last week's episode to build that out a bit, and maybe a little bit here as well, or just do this entire thing as its own episode, because I think that an episode like this is one of those moments which would be the big turning point for a lot of people's opinions on this series, for the better, I will have to say. I did like the backstory stuff that we got with Crawler and the hoodie. Once again, it gives us a great insight as to his background and the kind of person that he really is. He is an incredibly selfless person, almost to a fault. That hero name of Nice Guy just really fits him, and he's proven that time and again he's someone who will seemingly stop at nothing to help others, even when it comes at a great expense to himself. Granted, he seems to be a little bit less forgiving when it comes to his All Might merchandise, but that is a whole other matter. As mentioned last week, he seems definitely to be the kind of person who will go far beyond himself to try and help others, regardless of the cost to himself. Even, as we learn in this episode, it means him giving up the chance on becoming a pro-hero full stop. Or at least certainly in the time period he would have liked to have done. Sure, had he actually gone to his entrance exam, there's no guarantee that he would have gotten that far, and, well, to be honest, what we have seen of him thus far in this series, he probably still would have done so, and he probably would have made it through to the other side of his course a fully licensed pro hero by now, but hey, that's not how things ended up going, are they? Because as we see in this particular episode, he was willing to give up his chance at happiness, his chance at attaining his greatest dream, all for the sake of helping some kid he didn't even know, even giving up a treasured item of his, also that kid would be safe, and on the hope that one day that kid would grow up to become a hero themselves. His great reward for doing all of this, for putting himself in harm's way, for throwing away his one great ambition in life and a beloved item of his possession, is just to do it all for the warm, fuzzy feelings that come from the fact that he helped someone. I mean, sure, this guy is fantastic. I might want to temper my next statement, but he does feel like one of my favourite superheroes because of just how nice it is. He's the guy that you would love to have as a superhero. Even if he doesn't become one of the big ones that saves the day and punches the big blue space laser and the big purple alien bad guy, he's definitely the one that you would want as your friendly neighbourhood superhero. He'd go out his way to help anybody, regardless of whether it's just helping an old lady cross the street, or deal with some school bullies, or to stop a bank robbery or something bigger that might be in the neighbourhood. He's the ideal candidate to become a pro-hero. Of course, with all that said, there is a part of me that is dreading, in the event that this does become an anime, all the videos going, which is the better hero, Crawler or Deku? Ugh, that kind of makes my skin crawl at the idea of that, but It's an inevitability. Though with that said, I probably will make my own version of that video once all of this is done and dusted. I've even started writing it, I will admit. I did have a little bit of a flash of inspiration when I came up with that bit for my review this week, but, you know, that's a whole other thing if it even happens at all. I will admit that his niceness does feel a tad silly. Yeah, this guy is the one that you'd want as your friendly neighbourhood superhero. He's the guy that goes above and beyond to help others. He's a great guy, he is, this Crawler. But whilst he is good, he feels a bit too good. Almost cartoonishly good. Like, there may be a deeper reason as to why he's like this. Some event in his past that's really pushed him down this path. Some traumatic event that ended up making him feel that he needs to help the world a lot more. Something great that happened in his past, now he feels as though he has to help everybody. Or it may just simply be because of the fact he's a massive fan of All Might and he wants to live up to that legacy. Regardless of what it is, I will admit it does feel a tad cartoonish. Not so much I would class it as a negative, because I think that there might be a little bit more here going on than meets the eye, as is something that we definitely see is the case with Popstep in this episode. I know that for a lot of people, when they read this and potentially even watch it later on, they're really going to end up digging and really connecting with this stuff with Crawler, as that does feel more traditional, like your emotional core to the episode. But for me, the emotional core for this episode is the stuff that we see and learn with Popstep. I know, again, that relatively speaking, this is a Crawler episode. It's about him, his backstory, what makes him tick, and that the revelations to do with Popstep are pretty much won or lost on the strength of that twist and how well it resonates with you. You know, let's be blunt, if you hate the twist, you're not getting anything from it, and I will admit I do have issues with it, which I will talk about in the negative section, but from a raw drama point of view, I do like it. Like, if you're going to end up going into this will they, won't they romantic partnership bit, I think that this is a fine way in doing it, and I think it feels a lot more personal and feels a lot more realistic. Like, she doesn't know how to really express how she truly feels towards him, so she has to retreat into herself and to go back to this item of comfort that she has for herself. And again, I really like the fact that we're seeing more of her. This is something I've wanted to see for the past few weeks or so, to really get an understanding as to what makes her tick and to just see why she is the way that she is. I still think there's more to go with her, because I think there's still a few dots that need lining up. Her motivation to become a hero, for me, I think that's the thing that we need. Even if at the end of the day it's purely for selfish reasons, I would like to see it. I do like the fact that we are getting a clearer understanding as to why she is the way that she is. Popstep, both as a superhero and as a young woman, is shown to be rather brash and forward. She's not the kind of person that suffers fools lightly, and in a social situation at the very least, she won't go quietly into the night. And whilst those kind of traits are great for a hero, an influencer, or a pop star, it doesn't really help with interpersonal relationships. She, as we see in this series, is oftentimes confrontational, being combative with some of the people closest to her. Now, maybe there is a reason for this, and this is something that we might yet have the chance to see later on. I hope that it is. Maybe this is just as a result of kind of being connected to the entertainment industry and having to deal with people who want more from her than she's willing to give, as is something that we end up seeing teased in a few episodes previously. And even if she doesn't have romantic feelings for Crawler, she might still struggle to give him the hoodie back, because for her and the life that she lives and the personality she's developed, that would for her be admitting her weakness. It would have to be admitting that she didn't just need saving recently, she's always needed saving. Not just from anyone around her, but specifically from Crawler. It would show her as being weak, small, incompetent, not something that a hero or pop star should be. To give it back would show a side to herself that she really doesn't want to show. The difference between her hero persona and her regular everyday persona are night and day, whilst in terms of interpersonal relationships, they're much the same. Visually, they are very, very different. When she's in her regular civilian gear, she's very modest and meek-looking. When she's in a pop star outfit, she's a lot more gregarious, we'll say, as far as her personality and how she looks. And she fears that giving the hoodie back would show that true side of herself, the smaller and meeker side that she doesn't want to admit that she has. And what's more, she fears that even if she does give the hoodie back to Crawler, and that he does learn that she was the kid that he saved all those years ago, that she didn't become a pro-hero. She just became a vigilante, and not a very good one at that. The dream that Crawler has, that him giving the hoodie away to create this big inspirational figure later on that will become this great hero and that he'd get the warm fuzzies knowing that that was the case, would be shattered and trashed away because in the end that person just became a vigilante, which itself might hit harder knowing the truth. Once the dream is shattered, how will he react to Popstep? Of course, from what we see of him, he might be supportive and nice towards her, but Popstep doesn't know that. And she knows that she has frequently taken advantage of his hospitality. And she's worried that if she reveals the true reality of all that has been going on and this connection that they've had between each other for far longer than they think, she's worried what that might end up doing. She's worried that she might find herself getting pushed to the side once again. So as we see towards the episode, she retreats, hiding, small, meek and afraid, all summarising that great final shot of her. Because in the end, she's just a scared little girl that's in over her head. This whole sequence, we see a side to her that we haven't really seen. It is a great exploration of her character. Though with all that said, I fear that we just need now to get into the negatives. Whilst I do like what we see with Popstep in this episode, whilst I do like how it's handled, and whilst I do feel that if you're going to go down this will they, won't they relationship kind of trope between Crawler and Popstep, I do feel that whilst that in itself is well executed for what it is, I do feel that the fact that Popstep is the one that has the hoodie is something that I'm in two minds again of. Again, the idea that they executed as well as it is does take a lot of the sting out of it, but at the same time, the fact that she does have the hoodie makes it all feel way too coincidental for my liking. Coincidences generally is something that you should avoid when writing just about any piece of fiction. And whilst I am more forgiving of it than I think a lot of other writers and a lot of other commentators on YouTube are, for me, this is one of those instances where it's too coincidental for me in the worst possible way. In the main series, it's like us learning where the name Quirks come from, and that felt way too much like the I'm your father's cousin's friend's former roommate kind of deal, which I really don't like for stuff that's as significant as that and as significant as the hoodie here. Again, I think that how it was executed was fine, though there is a part of me that does feel that it would have been better to never learn as to who actually had the hoodie, that he just disappeared and this was just another sign of Crawler being such a great guy. Because the meat of that exchange, the meat of that story, is just to learn what a great guy Crawler really is. And it works for me a lot better than the will they, won't they stuff that they're leaning into with this series. I will admit that I'm not against the idea of this, the will they, won't they plot thread thing. I'm not against the idea of it between Popstep and Crawler, because from what little time we've seen together, they do have a decent chemistry, I feel. But it is one of those things where it does feel like, okay, it does feel like it's taking the sting out of what should be a very powerful moment. We learn that Crawler is just a nice guy, possibly to a fault, and that's just a part of him, so let's just enjoy that being a factor of him, to being, right, we need to do something with Popstep, so this is the thing we've done with it. Though I will say that it's not the worst way they could have done this, it's just that's one of those things that it feels like I like the ambiguity a little bit more than what they would have, what they have done with it. And there is a part of me that will admit that in the event that this show does get an anime, I really don't know how they would do this. Because the way the twist works in the manga, again, whilst I'm not a fan of it, I think it works brilliant because of the fact that the manga is in black and white, or at least the version that I have is in black and white. There might be a colour print of it later, but what I've got is in black and white. So when you're reading it, you don't know that that kid that Crawler saved in the past is Popstep because you can't see the hair colour. And from the artwork that I have seen of Popstep, she has very distinct pink hair. So unless it's dyed, you're gonna know who she is. Like when you see this little kid with pink fluffy hair being saved, you're gonna think, oh right, well then it's Popstep. Unless they end up recreating it in black and white, which might be a way into it, but I think that might give the game away a bit too prematurely for my liking. I'm sure they'll figure it out because, quite honestly, the people making this show are a lot cleverer than I am, specifically when it comes to animation, but still, I'm interested to see how they do it in the event there is an anime. So with all that said and done, let us get into the overview, and I will say that this was a lovely episode from start to finish. Whilst I do have some issues with it, I will admit that the way that they executed them is fine enough to take the sting out of that for me for the most part. And any kind of alternative idea that I have how that should have gone really does boil down to a different strokes for different folks thing. This isn't like an episode or two ago where I was having a bit of a mini rant as to the quality of the print in the actual copy of the manga that I have, like the speech bubbles not being aligned correctly, that kind of stuff. There's nothing like that this week. And something I did notice as a tangentially related thing to that, and I am going off script a little here, is that in one of the panels it does keep something in Japanese, but it just has a little translation in the margin telling you what it means, and also the character reads what it means as well. So there is a part of me that can't help but feel that why didn't you just do that last week? But anyway, before we get into another rant, it's time for us to now go into Comment Corner! Okay, so it's time for Comment Corner, and I will admit, for the sake of editorial transparency, I am recording this review on a Monday. Usually I record them on a Wednesday or Thursday, depending on the timing of things, but because this week I'm especially busy, I have a big event I have to take part in Wednesday, so I just don't have the time to really put this off. So I do apologise if you have left a comment between Monday and the time that this video goes out. It's not going to be included in this video, but it will be included in next week's video, as well as any comments got from this week. Apologies for having to do it like this. I just don't have the time this week to go off the usual schedule. With that said and done, however, we do have a comment from Big X1 who says, a short but sweet episode, one of two halves in this volume. So if you get busy again, you'll have another short one to do. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. I think that last week's episode was just short, sweet, and a lot of fun. Maybe not as substantial as I would have liked it to have been. This week's, to me, felt like a short one. Maybe because of just how focused I've been on things recently. It feels shorter, but, you know, it's fine. It's good. It really gets the grade for me. It was really good, and I have managed to talk about this for about as long as I talk about most other reviews I do, so yeah, in the end it all worked out. Anyway, thank you for your comment, and if you want to leave a comment at this week's episode, do so in the comment section down below, and words are escaping me, sorry about that, but you know the rules, and so do I. Thank you all for listening, and see you next time. Goodbye! Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, favourite, subscribe, click the bell, and do all the YouTubey stuff that YouTube wants you to do. Go on, it'll do me a power of good. Until next time, my friends, goodbye!